Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel, and welcome for the first time if you guys are here for the first time. Today I'm going to be doing another short book review of the Alaska Gardeners Handbook by Lenore Hedla. This book is a lot shorter than the books that I've reviewed in the past. It's more like a magazine, to be honest. It's got beautiful full-color photographs, and its content is mostly a variety lists of flowers, vegetables, and other plants that you can grow in Alaska. It being a little bit different than the books that I've talked about before, we're going to talk about a few things that I think it's good for and a few things I think it's could do a lot better on. Let's get into it. Let's start with the things that I really like about this book. Pro number one, so many varieties. You're ready to pick which plants you want to start out with, or you're ready to branch out into some plants that you've never tried before. This book is for you. It's essentially just a giant variety lists with in-depth descriptions on each plant. About 50% of the plants also come with this beautiful full-color photograph on glossy paper. It makes it really attractive to pick out a whole bunch of plants and try them. And it does go much further in depth on each plant than the previous books did, where the previous books covered the in-depth science behind how to grow things in general. This book covers the in-depth information on each plant that you choose. Pro number two, Alaska-based. Obviously, it says Alaska Gardeners Handbook on the cover, so you know that each of these varieties is gonna be good for your specific area. The author isn't from Canada or speaking from Michigan, where the climate can be totally different. She has lived and worked in Alaska for most of her life and is speaking straight from experience. Pro number three. Did I mention the pretty pictures? Really well designed front cover, well designed back cover, pretty pictures of her friends and family, as well as the specific plant varieties in full color. Color and resolution in a photograph usually isn't that important, but when it comes to plants, it can really help identify different plants that may be similar and plant diseases and problems. Black and white photos sometimes just don't give the definition that you need to be able to identify things. And that's where this handbook excels. Pro number four, it's well organized. Just like the previous book, it's got a great index that's over 4 pages long. You can look up exactly what you might want to plant and go see whether it is in fact a good variety for you. You can also just thumb through, find a good plant variety, and read up more on it. In the table of contents, you'll find that the book is divided into sections. We've got flowers, food crops, a landscape, lawns and ground covers, shrubs and trees, gardening indoors, fighting back, that's about diseases and pests, and from greenhorn to green thumb, which covers a little bit of the basic information you might find in a more in-depth book. This book is essentially a really good magazine for looking for new varieties to plant, but it's not all roses. Let me tell you about some things that I think aren't so good about this book. Con number one, it may be a little out of date climate-wise. This book was first published in 1994, the year I was born. Now you know how old I am. And our global climate has changed a lot since then, and even more drastically in the Arctic areas, where the changes can be much more extreme than the average global temperature. So over time, the varieties in this book may no longer be applicable, or there may be a whole bunch of more varieties that are not even listed in this that have become growable in the northern climates. It's definitely not an exhaustive list, to be sure. So if you're looking for something that you just can't find here, I'd say just Google it. Con number two, and this isn't so much of a con as it is the way the book was designed. As I said earlier, it's a little more of a magazine or a catalog of plant varieties than it is a handbook. You're not going to find detailed growing information for generalized growing knowledge. As in the past two books and in some books that I'm going to mention later, this book has a very tiny section on things like composting and soil science, but it is certainly not the in-depth science that you're going to be looking for in other books. So if you're just getting started and you don't really know how to garden yet, this is not going to be the book for you. Con number 3, and this is a nitpick that I have talked about in the past 2 books, and I'm going to talk about in the next books as well. There's no scientific research listed in this book. You know me, I love a good journal citation, but there's simply nothing found here. The author's extremely experienced and extremely knowledgeable, and I absolutely respect that. But if you're looking for the scientific citations to back it up, you won't find it here. Con number 4. This relates a little bit to my con number 3 about no scientific citations, but this book has some outdated information, unfortunately. Information that organic, regenerative, or permaculture farmers just won't find in here. She mentions a lot of imported or non-native plants in this book, and while she doesn't endorse any invasive plants, that's a good thing. There are a lot of non-native plants that may not be ideal or may not be researched quite enough to be considered a good part of your garden. One thing that I find extremely important to get right is the application of fertilizers and weed killers. She does mention organic practices, but only in about 1 paragraph in the whole book. And then she goes right on to recommend glyphosate, which is the commonly found Roundup made by Monsanto. And we have since discovered that that's not the best thing to be putting generically on all of your garden. If you want to learn more about glyphosate in particular and why it can be harmful to some plants, click the link in the description below. I love it when people want to learn more about specific topics. So, do I recommend this book? That's gonna be a no from me, unfortunately. For beginning gardeners, I want gardening information, not variety information. If you're just starting out, you may be a little overwhelmed with the sheer amount of varieties found in this book, and you're not gonna find the how-to information that you're gonna find in other books. I would recommend starting with a how-to guide and then branching out to varieties as you get comfortable. Also, if you want up-to-date information, or if you want citations and scientific studies to back up your information, you're not going to find it in this book. But ultimately, it does have really pretty pictures. I do like thumbing through it just to see the possibilities of things that I can grow. Have you read this book? Would you recommend it to others? Give me your thoughts in the comments section below. Next time, we're going to be talking about a big, thick textbook. Don't worry, it's really accessible, and I have some fun tricks for getting through it. Until then, keep learning and keep growing.